I found out my girlfriend had 4 other boyfriends. I contacted them all. For her birthday, we threw her a surprise party. She walked in to see all 5 of us standing there together. I handed her a cake that said, "Happy birthday to our girlfriend." My girlfriend Jessica is a miracle of modern logistics. For the last year I thought I was in a normal, committed relationship with a vibrant, if slightly chaotic, woman. I had no idea I was actually just one part of a complex, multi-layered romantic enterprise. Jessica wasn't just my girlfriend. She was the CEO of a startup with 5 active clients, and we were all her boyfriend. I discovered this last Tuesday by complete accident. Jessica is pathologically careless with her phone. She left it in my car when I dropped her off at her yoga class. I found it on the passenger seat an hour later, and being the good boyfriend, I decided to drive it back to her so she wouldn't be without it. As I was pulling up to her yoga studio, the phone screen lit up. A notification from a guy named Derek work with a heart emoji next to his name. The message read, "Thinking about you. Last night was amazing." My heart stopped. Last night, she had been with me. We had watched a movie and fallen asleep on the sofa. Then another notification popped up. A guy named Steve, Jim. The message, "Can't wait for our hike this weekend." Beautiful. We were supposed to be going to my parents' house this weekend. It was like a switch flipped in my head. The confusion and hurt were there, but they were immediately overtaken by a cold, morbid curiosity. My hands shaking, I opened her phone. She had used her fingerprint to unlock it in my car earlier, so it was still open. I didn't go digging deep. I didn't have to. The main screen of her messaging app was a switchboard of deception. There was Derek, her work husband, who she was clearly sleeping with. There was Steve, her personal trainer, who was more than just a trainer. There was a long-distance guy named Paul, an old flame from college to whom she was promising to visit soon on a girls' trip. And then there was me, Ben, the stable, reliable, live-in boyfriend, the anchor of the entire operation. I felt a wave of nausea followed by a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. But then a third feeling emerged, something far more dangerous, a sense of profound, analytical focus. She wasn't just a cheater. She was a master scheduler, a brilliant con artist. A betrayal this complex, this audacious, didn't deserve a simple, screaming confrontation. It deserved a response of equal complexity and creativity. I drove home, her phone still in my hand. I spent the next 5 hours in a state of hyper-focused investigation. I went through her messages, her calendar, her social media. I was no longer her boyfriend. I was an auditor, examining the books of a fraudulent corporation. It was worse than I thought. There wasn't just 4 other boyfriends. There were 5. The 5th was a wealthy, older, divorced man named Marcus, who she had listed in her phone as mentor. He was the one funding the designer bags and expensive spa days she claimed she was paying for with her freelance graphic design work. Each of us served a purpose. I was the stable home base. Derek was the daily thrill at the office. Steve was the fitness-obsessed hobby partner. Paul was the romantic, long-distance fantasy. And Marcus was the bank. She had built a perfect ecosystem of men, each one fulfilling a different need, all of them completely unaware of the other's existence. By the end of the night, I had a complete dossier. I had their full names, their photos, their phone numbers, and a collection of screenshots of her messages to each of them, detailing her lies and her schedule. My plan began to form. A private confrontation would be pointless. She was a professional liar. She would just create a new lie. No, the only way to properly address a deception of this magnitude was to bring all the deceived parties together. The only way to show her the truth of what she had done was to have all 5 of her boyfriends in the same room, at the same time. Her birthday was in 3 weeks. She was already dropping hints about wanting a big surprise party. She had no idea what kind of surprise I was about to start planning. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and sent the first text message to a man I had never met. "Hi Derek. My name is Ben. We don't know each other, but we have a girlfriend in common. Her name is Jessica. I have some information I think you'll want to see. We need to talk." I sent the same message customized with the right name to Steve, Paul, and Marcus. The game was on. Update 1. Assembling what I came to call the Jessica Avengers was a delicate and surreal process. The initial reactions to my text message ranged from angry disbelief to cautious curiosity. Derek, the work husband, was the most aggressive. He called me immediately, accusing me of being a crazy, jealous ex trying to stir up trouble. "I don't know who you are, man," he said, "but you need to back off. Jessica and I are just friends." "Are you?" I asked calmly. "Because according to this text she sent you last Monday, she was telling you how much she missed you while she was lying in bed next to me. I'm happy to forward you the screenshot. Or perhaps you'd prefer the one where she's telling me she has to work late on a project with you, while simultaneously texting you plans for a romantic dinner." There was a stunned silence. I had his attention. Steve, the gym guy, was just confused. Paul, the long-distance fantasy, was heartbroken. But the most interesting reaction came from Marcus, the older, wealthy benefactor. He wasn't angry. He was intrigued. He was a retired businessman, a man who had seen it all, and he seemed almost impressed by the audacity of her scheme. I arranged to meet with each of them individually over the next week. I met them in quiet bars and coffee shops. I was not emotional. I was a presenter, laying out my findings with the cold, hard data of screenshots and calendar entries. I showed each of them the lies she had told them, and the lies she had told about them. I showed Derek the messages where she called him her fun, disposable distraction. I showed Steve the texts where she mocked his obsession with fitness. I showed Marcus the evidence that she was using the money he gave her to fund her trips to see her long-distance boyfriend, Paul. With each man, the reaction was the same. A slow, dawning horror, followed by a cold, quiet rage. I had presented them with undeniable proof that they were not a special partner in a secret affair. They were just a cog in a machine. By the end of the week, I had them all on board. We created a private, secure group chat. The five of us, a motley crew of betrayed men, began to plan. The initial ideas were a mix of petty revenge and grand gestures. But we all agreed that the punishment had to fit the crime. Her crime was deception, compartmentalization, and making us all feel like we were the only one. The only logical revenge, then, was to shatter that illusion in the most public and undeniable way possible. The surprise birthday party was the perfect venue. I, as the live-in boyfriend, took the lead on planning. I told Jessica that I was going to throw her a massive surprise party at our apartment. I told her I wanted to make her the most special day of her life. She was ecstatic. She loved the idea of me, her stable, boring boyfriend, fawning over her, and organizing a huge event in her honor. We set the date and time. I told her she needed to be out of the apartment for the entire afternoon so I could decorate and get everything ready. I told her to dress up, that it was going to be a fancy affair. She bought a new, expensive dress for the occasion, probably with Marcus's money. The five of us coordinated the logistics. Derek was in charge of getting a banner made. Steve, the gym guy, handled the drinks. Paul, the long-distance boyfriend, agreed to drive into town for the event. And Marcus, with a wry smile, said he would take care of the cake. The plan was simple. There would be no other guests, no friends, no family. The only attendees at Jessica's surprise party would be her five boyfriends. We would all gather at my apartment an hour before she was due to arrive. We would set the scene. And then we would wait. She thought she was walking into a party celebrating her. She had no idea she was walking into a final, public shareholder meeting for the failed corporation of her love life, and her employment was about to be terminated. Update 2. The day of the party was one of the most surreal of my life. The four other men arrived at my apartment at 6 o'clock sharp. It was the first time we had all been in the same room together. The atmosphere was a strange mix of tension, camaraderie, and a shared, grim sense of purpose. We were five strangers from completely different walks of life, united by the lies of one woman. Derek, the work husband, unrolled the banner. It was a masterpiece of passive aggression. It just said, in big, cheerful letters, "Happy birthday." No name. Just a general, impersonal declaration. We hung it over the living room window. Steve, the gym guy, stocked the fridge with an impressive amount of beer and champagne. "Might as well have a real party after the guest of honor leaves," he said with a wry grin. Paul, the long-distance boyfriend, had a haunted look in his eyes. The betrayal seemed to have hit him the hardest. He just quietly helped arrange the furniture. And then Marcus, the benefactor, arrived. He was carrying a large, square cake box from the most expensive bakery in the city. He placed it on the kitchen counter with the reverence of a man handling a sacred object. "The inscription is exactly as we discussed," he said, a glint in his eye. We spent the next hour making small talk, a group of men who should have been rivals, now allies in a common cause. We compared stories, laughed at the audacity of her lies, and discovered the intricate web of scheduling she had used to keep us all apart. It was like a support group for the victims of a charismatic cult leader. At 7:45 I received a text from Jessica. "Just left the spa, so excited for my surprise. Be there in 15 minutes. Love you. So. I showed the text to the others. A quiet, determined silence fell over the room. It was time. We took our positions. We arranged ourselves in a casual semicircle in the middle of the living room, facing the front door. We just stood there, 5 men, waiting. At exactly 8 o'clock, we heard her key in the lock. The door swung open. Jessica stepped inside, a brilliant, beaming smile on her face, ready to be showered with affection. "Surprise." She called out into the apartment. Her smile faltered the moment she saw us. It didn't vanish immediately. It just froze, her brain struggling to process the scene in front of her. She saw me. Then she saw Derek next to me. Her eyes widened. She saw Steve on my other side. Her face went pale. She saw Paul by the window, and Marcus leaning against the kitchen counter. The color drained from her face. Her designer handbag slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor with a soft thud. She looked like she had walked into a room and found all of her secret lives having a meeting without her. What is this?" She stammered, her voice a hoarse whisper. "What are you all doing here?" No one said a word. We just stood there, a silent jury. I stepped forward. I was holding the cake. With a calm, steady hand, I lifted the lid off the box and turned it so she could read the beautiful, swirling blue icing. It said, "Happy birthday to our girlfriend." The silence was broken by a small, choked gasp from Jessica. She stared at the cake, then at our faces, her expression crumbling from confusion into pure, unadulterated horror. She tried to lie. It was a desperate, pathetic final gambit. "I don't understand," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "Ben, who are all these men? Why are they in our apartment?" Derek was the first to speak. "Don't, Jessica," he said, his voice cold. "Just don't. We know everything. I'm the work husband. I'm the personal trainer," Steve added, his arms crossed. "I'm the old college friend," Paul said, his voice full of a quiet sadness. "And I," Marcus concluded, pushing himself off the counter, "and the mentor and the chief financial backer of this entire sordid little enterprise, apparently." She looked at me, her last hope. "Ben, please," she whispered. "Tell me this is a joke." "The only joke here, Jessica," I said. My voice flat was all of us. "But it's not funny anymore." I placed the cake on the coffee table. "The party's over," I said. "Happy birthday." Final update, the scene in the apartment after the cake reveal was a complete and total meltdown. Jessica's brain seemed to short-circuit. Faced with the impossible reality of all her separate lives colliding in one room, she didn't have a coherent strategy. She just cycled through every manipulative tactic in her arsenal. First, she tried denial, insisting we were all crazy, that we were all part of some elaborate prank I was playing. When that didn't work, she tried to isolate and conquer, turning to each of us individually. She tried to tell Derek that the others meant nothing. She tried to tell Paul that he was the only one she ever really loved. It was a pathetic performance, and none of us were buying it. We just stood there, a silent, unmovable wall of truth. Finally, she turned to rage. She screamed at me, calling me a monster for orchestrating her humiliation. She called the others fools for believing me. It was a wild, desperate tirade from a cornered animal. When she finally ran out of steam, I spoke. "It's over, Jessica," I said calmly. "This is my apartment. The lease is in my name. I want you out. You can pack a bag with your essentials tonight. You have 1 week to get the rest of your things." Then, one by one, the other men delivered their own verdicts. "We're done," Derek said. "Don't ever contact me again," Steve added. Paul just shook his head and walked out the door without a word. Marcus, the businessman, was the most cutting. "Consider my mentorship and all associated financial benefits permanently concluded," he said. "I suggest you find a new investor." Within the space of 15 minutes, she had been dumped simultaneously by 5 different men. She left that night with a single suitcase, her face a tear-streaked ruin. The 5 of us, the newly formed Brotherhood of the Betrayed, actually stayed for a while. We opened the champagne, we cut the cake, it was delicious, and we had our own very strange, very cathartic party. We toasted to our shared freedom. The aftermath was exactly as you would expect. Jessica's life imploded. She had lost her home, her primary source of stability, her work distraction, her hobby partner, her romantic fantasy, and her bank. All in one night. The story of her 5-boyfriend surprise party became a legend in our respective social circles. She was a pariah. She tried a few desperate moves. She sent me a series of threatening emails, demanding I pay her for her emotional investment in our relationship. I had my lawyer send her a cease and desist letter that shut that down immediately. She tried to spin a victim narrative online, but the story was too well known. Everyone knew the truth. The last I heard, she had to move back to her hometown to live with her parents, completely disgraced. The grand, exciting life she had built for herself was revealed to be a fragile house of cards, and we had just gently blown it over. A month after the party, the 5 of us met up for a beer. It was a bizarre but hilarious evening. We were 5 completely different guys, but we had a bond that no one else could understand. Marcus, who had done some digging, informed us that Jessica had a long history of this kind of behavior. We weren't the first, but thanks to our little party, we were almost certainly the last. As for me, my life is peaceful. The apartment is quiet. I didn't seek revenge out of rage. I did it as a matter of principle. She treated people like disposable assets, like items on a checklist. I simply organized a meeting of all the assets to compare notes. She wasn't a girlfriend, she was a Ponzi scheme, and all I did was call a meeting of the investors to inform them that the fund was bankrupt.